Welcome to Steam Railway video number 2. As predicted in our previous edition, Blue Peter now holds the record for the southbound ascent to Askill. The A2 became the second engine to beat the Duke. However, both number 9 and now the A2 made their runs with smaller payloads. Here, 60532 nears Blackburn with the record-breaking Cumbrian Mountain Express. In this issue, the power of the Black Eights, Stanier 8Fs in action, both today and in the 1960s. The Glorious Years, Gavin Morrison's archive footage from the last days of Steam. Steam and the NRM, the National Collection at work, plus the new look National Railway Museum. Celebrations in Metroland. The N7 and the Black 5 visit 4th Rail territory. Gallery, featuring Bahamas on the Keighley and Worth Valley. Paddington, London's last steam terminus, including the last 3 steam visitors to the Great Western Station. News Pictorial, Easter reopenings, mainline tours, and locomotives on loan. In the 1930s, the LMS desperately required a new engine to speed up their freight operations. In 1932, William Stanier became the chief mechanical engineer for the company, and just 3 years later, the first 8F emerged from the crew works. In 1939, war broke out. The War Department chose the 8F as its standard design. These were principally used in the Middle East. 22 of the class were diverted from the LMS to fulfill an order for the Turkish railways. This view, filmed in the early 1980s, shows one of these veterans in use as a yard pilot at Irmak. The Turkish 8Fs are in the process of being made redundant. 45160 returned to Britain in 1989 and was immediately steamed at the Swanage Railway on this demonstration freight. This engine is now receiving a full overhaul. The withdrawal of this locomotive for a full restoration leaves just 3 members of the class steamable in Britain. This is the Butterley-based example, number 48151. Here, the crew-built engine attacks the long drag on a private charter. 852 of these Stanier 280s were built. 8 railway works were used, in addition to engines built by Bayer Peacock, North British and the Vulcan Foundry. One Swindon-built engine survives, 48431. Here, the Keighley-based engine is seen at the Railway Spring Gala. This event was a huge success. The main attraction was the pairing of 2 8Fs. At Ingrow, the Severn Valley-based 48773 leads. Note the blue smokebox number plate, typical of Scottish practice. It was a Palmedy engine from September 1957 to July 1963. .48773 was recently repainted into BR Black after 23 years in LMS livery. The SVR locomotive was preserved straight out of everyday BR service. Our final shot in this sequence is of the pair heading south from Haworth. Today, 8 Black 8s survive in Britain. 48305 on the Great Central is expected to return to steam soon. The 8F story is far from over. Our Glorious Years section in this edition features the film of well-known stills photographer Gavin Morrison. These are just a selection of Gavin's favourite views in the last days of steam. We start on the climb to Shap Summit, a classic location in classic weather conditions. Britannia Class 70023 Venus hauls a northbound freight up the 1 in 75. On the rear of the train is BR Standard Class 4 75030, the Tebay Banker. Officially, steam would end on Shap at the end of 1967. Another Standard Class 4 75019 is seen in action on the Grassington branch. These trains to Swindon Quarry were among the last regular steam-operated freights in Britain. Originally, this duty would have been worked by a Skipton engine. By 1968, Rosegrove locomotives were in use, cleaned by enthusiasts. On Gavin's home territory, Jubilee Hardy departs the now closed goods depot at Barry Road in Bradford. This is the evening Carlisle freight. Note the yellow stripe on the cab of the locomotive. This addition to the livery was added to denote engines banned from working south of Crewe on the newly electrified West Coast main line. On the other side of the Pennines, we visit another location, now lost to railways. Manchester's G-Mex Exhibition Centre was built on the site of Manchester Central. Blue Peter departs on a special to Holyhead in disgusting weather. Our last view in the northwest is on the last day of steam between Birkenhead and Chester. The now preserved 9F 92203 arrives at Hooton from the north. The Somerset and Dorset line provides the location for our final view. An Ivat 262 approaches Shillingstone from Blandford in January 1966. The line would close 2 months later. BR steam ended in 1968. However, at least a little of the spirit of the glorious years survives in preservation. In May 1992, London Underground revived its interest in steam traction. Harrow on the Hill became the centre of activity in a 5-day extravaganza. The operation of preserved steam engines is of course not new to LT. In both 1989 and 1990, Neasden Depot has housed the tank engines associated with these excursions. This is the ECS for the first train, arriving from Neasden behind Butterley-based Black 5, 44932, LT's first tender engine. The trains were a duplicate of the 1990 runs to Amersham, but with new motive power. From Harrow on the Hill, the line heads northwest through Rickmansworth to Amersham, now the terminus for the Metropolitan. With the train standing in platform 1, we join the signalman as the road is set for the first train, the 0940 departure for Amersham. 6 trains were run each day. The last service would not return here until 9 p.m. The signal box is situated above the platforms and offers an unusual vantage point as the Black 5 departs. The line is jointly operated by London Transport and Network South East. It's 4-track as far as Watford South Junction. These specials and BR's Marylebone to Aylesbury trains using just the fast lines. The other locomotive was 69621 from the East Anglian Railway Museum at Chapel and Wakes, Colne. Here, the N7 barely disturbs play. Memories of 1960s steam in suburbia? At Northwood, the same locomotive is seen with the returning train, the 3:40 p.m. service. The rolling stock is former network EMUs, purchased from BR and repainted into Metropolitan red. Sarah Siddons is required for braking. Here, the tank climbs at 1 in 106 to Chorley Wood. The event was to celebrate 100 years of the line from Chalfont to Amersham. 44932 returns to Harrow. The use of this Black 5 on these trains was a pleasant surprise. The Marylebone to Nottingham expresses along this line provided regular work for the class during the 1960s. At Amersham, the Black 5, having just arrived from Harrow, runs through the station to Stable. All engine changes were performed here. This engine would be prepared in the siding for the following departure. Meanwhile, the Great Eastern tank would work a return journey to Harrow. This is the penultimate departure on the first day. Hopefully, we have not seen the end of LT steam. The investment in these coaches is an encouraging sign. The operation of steam excursions from Paddington has come to a close. These opening views are of Penrhys Castle and Sudeley Castle in happier times. Everyday steam to the terminus ended in 1965. Since then, the station has had only brief flirtations with steam. Two other castles, Pendennis and Clun, ran to Birkenhead in 1967. In 1979, KG5 ran to Didcot. And in 1982, shuttles ran to Old Oak Common Open Day. After a break of nearly a decade, steam returned to Paddington in November 1991. Marylebone had been remodelled and its steam operation had been transferred to Brunel's terminus. Nunney Castle and King Edward I were the first to feature on trips to Stratford. This was the third engine, Duke of Gloucester, making its debut on April the 12th. The unique 8P Pacific was working a South Yorkshireman to Sheffield. From there, it would continue to York, where it would take part in the reopening of the National Railway Museum. All seemed to be going well as the locomotive cautiously departed. Unfortunately, as the train departed, the brakes were applied. Apparently, the engine could not maintain a vacuum. A hole was discovered in the vacuum pipe of the rear coach. This was repaired, and the special departed around 40 minutes late. In the event, the delay was more than welcomed by Intercity. Its staff had failed to load the food onto the train by departure time. The steam operation was restricted to Sundays only. This view, exactly 1 week after the Duke's departure, is the returning William Shakespeare from Stratford, with Nunney Castle in command. The running of steam locomotives into the terminus has been curtailed due to extensive engineering work and remodelling of the station throat in conjunction with the Heathrow link. After May the 3rd, all steam excursions are booked to start and terminate at Ealing Broadway. This is the last train featuring City of Truro from Derby. The Veteran 440 was booked for another tour the following week. Unfortunately, this was cancelled, and the arrival seen here has almost certainly brought down the curtain on this locomotive's mainline career. The city's BR ticket has now expired. Paddington has probably seen its last steam arrival, but only time will tell. The appearance of City of Truro is without question the best way to bring Paddington steam to an end. Let's hope for another revival. The National Railway Museum at York, home of the National Collection, is the largest museum of its type in the world. Its forerunner was the British Transport Museum at Clapham, which was replaced by the NRM and closed in 1975. Even in the 1960s, Clapham had space problems. Numerous key engines, such as Green Arrow, were never on display. A larger museum site became essential. Approximately 25 years separate these two views of the Adams-designed LSWR T3. Today, 563 takes pride of place on A turntable in the Great Hall at York. Even the extensive site at York has proved to be restrictive. These scenes are of the reopening of the NRM after a 2-year refurbishment program to renew the roof and utilize the available space more efficiently. Unfortunately, one of the turntables in the former roundhouse has been removed during the redevelopment, making the £6 million program somewhat controversial. Special guest at the event was His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent. Here, the Duke opens the museum's newest exhibit, a section from the Channel Tunnel. Outside, the 350 guests were invited to a mini steam-up. The plan to represent the Big Four and BR was sadly curtailed by the non-appearance of a southern locomotive. The Duke was invited to ride on the Duchess. From the Duchess to the Duke. Representing BR Steam was 71,000 Duke of Gloucester. This engine was withdrawn in 1962 and sidelined for the National Collection. After 5 years in store at Crewe, one of its cylinders and valve gear from one side was removed for display in the Science Museum, and the locomotive was sent to South Wales to be scrapped. The collection only contains 2 BR standards. This is Oliver Cromwell. This, Britannia, was one of 4 engines used by BR on a last-day rail tour in 1968. The other BR standard in the collection is Evening Star, the last steam locomotive built for British Railways. Unfortunately, the 9F's boiler certificate has now expired, and there are no immediate plans to steam this engine again. This is now archive. 92220 retired on the main line in 1988. Here, the 9F heads north on the S&C. This locomotive was built at Swindon in 1960. City of Truro emerged from the same workshops 57 years earlier. Here, 3440 works its last mainline train. The Great Western Railway is relatively poorly represented in the collection. Lodestar is now at York. It has previously been permanently on display in the Swindon Museum. Its place there has been taken by KG5. The exhibits are now in chronological order. Lodestar's neighbour, Butler Henderson, is 12 years its junior. The improved director has recently returned to the museum after a prolonged loan agreement with the Great Central Railway. One of the highlights was the repainting of the D11 into BR Black in February 1992. Another preserved railway to benefit from a loan agreement with the museum is the Swanage Railway. It seems that all of York's 440s are retiring at the same time. This locomotive, the LSWR T9 of 1899, will steam for the last time in 1992. Here, the Drummond Greyhound is in use for the training of footplate crews. This scene is of the restart on the bank between Hurston and Harman's Cross. The T9 was returned to steam by the Uri S15 group on behalf of the Mid-Hants Railway. It will probably return to York later this year. Another National Collection engine restored on a private railway was the Northeastern T3. NELPEG members returned the 080 to service, the engine now working on the NYMR. The practice of preserved railways restoring National Collection engines is now well established. This 1970s view is on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway. The engine is 2700, the LMS Crab, arriving at Haworth. The Hughes 260 has now returned to York. The Crab is not the only NRM engine to operate on the line. This view is of number 990 Henry Oakley, departing Keighley in the 1970s. This was the first Atlantic to be built in Britain and was withdrawn in 1937. After withdrawal, the locomotive was one of the exhibits in the original York Museum. Today, Henry Oakley is one of the projects for the Friends of the National Railway Museum. They hope to return this engine to steam in the 1990s. The roots of preservation go back many years. In 1953, this small-boilered Atlantic joined number 251, the NRM's large-boilered Atlantic, to operate the Plant Centenarian. Here, the pair are seen at King's Cross. The rail tour was run to celebrate 100 years of the Great Northern Works at Doncaster. 251 is now unlikely to steam again. 3 original boilers suitable for this engine were found a few years ago, but the museum failed to act. A prized exhibit is Mallard, the fastest steam engine in the world. 4468 is now a permanent attraction at York. The locomotive's steaming days are probably over. This view is from the Mallard 88 series of tours, when the A4 celebrated the 50th anniversary of its 126 miles per hour record run. Representatives of the National Collection on the main line are now few and far between. Duchess of Hamilton, Sir Lamiel and Green Arrow are the only engines with current BR certificates. Here, the V2 heads north on the S&C. Green Arrow was in fact the engine to break the steam ban over the Settle to Carlisle line in March 1978. 4771 was also honoured in the late 70s when it joined Midland Compound number 1000 on the Curator Rail Tour. This tour was run to commemorate the sad passing of curator John Scholes. The train is seen departing Leeds. After withdrawal in the late 1940s, the Johnson-designed Compound worked a series of tours in the 50s. The 1970s brought a second lease of life as a rail tour engine. Another Johnson design in the collection is the Midland Spinner. These scenes were recorded at the Midland Railway Centre as number 673 was steamed for the first time since the locomotive was restored at the site. The engine was overhauled for the Rainhill celebrations in 1980, and on the second day actually led the parade. Sadly, the 1897 built engine was rarely steamed, the museum taking back the spinner prematurely. The other single driving wheel tender engine in the collection is Great Northern No. 1. Parades are of course very prominent in the history of the York engines. The Stockton and Darlington was celebrated in 1875, 1925 and 1975. This engine 910 is the only locomotive to feature in all of these three ceremonies. We close with Aerolite. 67 years later, the same engine stands at York. One new feature of the NRM is the return to use of another engine. Ellerman Lines, the sectioned merchant, will see hundreds of miles serviced this year without going anywhere. The locomotive is now positioned a fraction of an inch above the rail. An electric motor provides the power for a motion demonstration. We close our tour of the National Collection as the Duke of Kent departs after his guided tour of the museum. The new look NRM is without doubt an incredible museum. The overall theme is the technology of railways. Over 150 years of development is covered. The NRM head, Andrew Dow, believes in a running museum. There is no question the best way to see the collection is in steam. We start our gallery section with Bahamas departing Haworth Shed on the Keighley and Worth Valley Spring Gala. Bahamas is now, of course, based on the Keighley and Worth Valley. The Jubilee became a resident after the demise of Dinting, the engine's previous home. Here, 45596 ascends the bank later the same day. On the Bluebell Railway, Normandy heads a works train for the new extension. Easter is traditionally when Britain's steam railways come alive. This year was no exception, with 3 railways opening new extensions. On the Bluebell, the U-class Mogul emerges from Sharpthorne Tunnel. The reopening to passengers of this stretch of line after a 34-year break gives the Bluebell a 7.5-mile line. Further north, Peak Rail extended to a temporary platform at Matlock Riverside, 2 miles from Darleydale. This is the very first passenger train to arrive at the new station. The locomotive is the Duke. In Wales, the ever-extending Llangollen Railway continues westwards to its goal at Corwen. This is the reopening special to the preserved station with probably the most difficult name in Britain. The last passenger train to stop here was 26 years ago. The 2-mile extension from Deeside Halt passes through stunning scenery. Foxcote Manor returns to Llangollen. The Llangollen is soon to adopt public limited company status. This, it is hoped, will assist in the push forward, firstly to Carrog, a further 2 miles, and eventually to Corwen. This summer, 2 lone engines will feature at the railway. The J27 from the NYMR will join the Seven Valleys Small Prairie, which is arriving at Llangollen. Steam Railway, of course, had its own extension in April. A special train was run on the Nene Valley to celebrate the launch of Steam Railway Video No. 1. This view is our train from the air. The video was accepted on behalf of EMAP.
On behalf of Steam Railway the magazine, I have great honour in accepting Steam Railway the video. I always knew that editing Steam Railway was a moving experience, but this proves it. Thank you very much indeed.
The train was booked for Britannia. Unfortunately, the BR Standard was failed the previous day and the J94 substituted. After a short ceremony at Wansford, the train returned to Peterborough via Yarwell Mill. from the Nene Valley to Tor Valley. The Severn Valley-based Bullid Pacific will have a busy summer. Its use on the Keighley and Worth Valley Spring Gala was followed by a Welsh Marches trip from Crewe to Hereford. This light engine working followed, the Bullid proceeding via the Cotswold line to Oxford en route to the network. This engine has again been selected by NSE and will feature in both their Ashford and their Exeter operations in June. Earlier the same day, 34027 is seen on the Welsh Marches. On the Severn Valley, another Bullid Pacific has been operating. Battle of Britain, 257 Squadron, visited the line for the railway's Spring Steam Gala. This engine would only visit for a few weeks and would return to the East Lancs to resume another loan period. 34072 approaches Foley Park Tunnel from Bewdley. The gala had something of a streamlined appearance. The other visitor was number 9. A staggering 96 trains were run over this weekend using 10 different engines. A full feature on this gala was in the June edition of Steam Railway. 2 weeks later, the A4 was in action on the Welsh Marches Express. This is the return working from Hereford to Crewe. Union of South Africa continued north via the S&C to Carlisle, before working this train, an SRPS charter back to Scotland. Working south from Carlisle is another LNER Pacific, Blue Peter. This was the record-breaking run, the A2 beating the Duke's Blue Riband time by 17 seconds. However, incompatible loadings means the Duke retains the Blue Riband. Flying Scotsman has also been seen working on the S&C. This train was run in association with the Preston Guild celebrations and unusually featured out and back steam. The A3 ascends the 1 in 100 on the outward journey. .4472 also worked on the first Ynys Môn for the 1992 summer season. The North Wales main line has a surprisingly busy schedule this year with the resumption of these trains, the BR-run North Wales Coast Expresses and a new service to Llandudno. The A3 departs Holyhead with the return train. During the engine's stay at the Crewe Heritage Centre, Flying Scotsman was used in conjunction with Princess Elizabeth for a midweek charter on the former Cheshire Cheese route. 4472 would work the train to Shrewsbury via Chester. 6201 would then take over to return the train to Crewe via Wem. The Princess prepares to depart for Shrewsbury. Later the same day, Princess Elizabeth departs Whitchurch after a brief stop. Lizzie has been fortunate to receive additional work. Sir Nigel Gressley will not be ready for its booked trips over the S&C. The Princess will substitute. This will give 6201 4 dates on the long drag this summer. The Princess was also among the stars of Longsight 150. BR's oldest depot opened its doors to the general public for a 2-day event in April. The invited steam engines were all associated with the area. Unfortunately, Britannia and Lion, 2 of the invited locomotives, failed to arrive. Also in attendance was locally based BR Standard 4 76079. The East Lancs-based engine shunts past Hull-based Black 5 5305. The next 2 months are filled with mainline action. In Wales, the North Wales coast route will feature 3 new engines, the Longsight Black 5 5305, Britannia and 80080. 5305 will retire after its run on August the 2nd. In the south, NSE will bring steam to Eastleigh for the first time since 1975. 75069 will run a shuttle to Salisbury during celebrations on the southwestern main line to Exeter. In the north, the S&C will see 5 different mainline steam locomotives. Highlights will be the Bahamas trip, featuring steam from Oxenhope to Carlisle and return, and the retirement runs of Green Arrow. Further north, the K1 will return to Fort William to join 5407. Another Black 5, 44871, will commence the Northern Bell operation from Aberdeen. This information is of course all subject to alteration. The recession is still biting into the mainline steam programme. Another Black 5 was in use by Network South East between Aylesbury and Princess Risborough. These shuttle trains were run to promote the new Chiltern Turbo services in the area. The Black 5, of course, proceeded from here to join the London Transport steam operation a few weeks later. The other LT locomotive has also been in use by NSE. This view is of the N7 operating the Easter shuttle service on the Sudbury branch. Another tank engine to see use on BR metals in the last 2 months is 80080. Here, the tank climbs the bank to Taraddig on the Cumbrian mainline. King Edward I has also been in use. This was its first train since its safety valve incident on March the 22nd. The King heads for Newport with a private charter from Swindon. Our final scene is another Great Western, 460 Nunney Castle, returning from Stratford-upon-Avon with a William Shakespeare. The castle had just made an unscheduled stop immediately after Hainault Junction. Every month, Steam Railway brings you the very best news, features and photography from the world of steam preservation. Steam Railway, from your newsagent every month. We hope you enjoyed this issue of Steam Railway video. you may be interested to know that Transport Video Publishing also produce a wide range of archive railway programmes, including Gavin Morrison's Memories of Steam series. If you would like further details, please send an SAE to P.O. Box 229, Wheathampstead, Herts, AL4 8SD.